Look at that, we are just about ready to get started. Seeing as my microphone's on and the door's closed, let's get started. I have a question for everybody in the audience today. First of all, how many of you here today would put together a piece of IKEA furniture without the instructions?
Brave
Couple
people
of
out there.
brave folks. Okay, how many of you here have heard of IKEA? Just checking. Okay, good. Second question. How many of you today would drive somewhere you weren't familiar with without a GPS? How many? Oh, are you guys still printing out MapQuest? Directions on the seat? Yeah? No? Well, for most of us, if we tried to put together an IKEA wardrobe or drive somewhere without a GPS, it would make us feel really grumpy, like Ripley here. Best cats ever, by the way. This is one of mine. And we're here today to help you prevent from feeling that way as you try to adopt Tableau at scale within your organizations. First of all, I'm going to apologize. I know I sound terrible. Man, that dev's on stage this morning. I think I just screamed myself hoarse at dynamic parameters. Was that not awesome? But I've lost my voice, but I promise I feel better than I sound, so just bear with me. And on that note, you're probably wondering who the heck we are. So let's do a little bit of an introduction here. This is my very good friend, Chad. I've known Chad for the entirety of my Tableau career, 10 months. Before that, Chad served in the Air Force for 25 years. Thank you for your service. It's also thanks to Chad that the Washington Nationals won the World Series. Ooh. Yeah, because Chad happened to be at each of the World Series home games for the Nationals, cheering them on. Because of Chad.
They lost all three at home, but we still won the whole thing.
So Chad works in Tableau's public sector as a customer success manager, and he helps federal customers successfully deploy Tableau at scale. Other fun fact today is Chad's birthday. Yeah, all right. How's it feel to be 29?
No place I'd rather be than right here today.
Talking to all of you. All right, I guess that means you get to talk about me a little bit.
Yeah,
huh?
so now my opportunity to introduce Shauna Miller. So Shauna started with Tableau 10 months ago today. 10-month anniversary today.
That's right.
But before that, Shauna worked at J&J doing data analytics for 15 years. Shauna's originally from the frozen north of Canada.
Hey.
And now lives here in the US. And when she's not helping America's largest financial institutions and pharmaceutical companies drive adoption at scale, she's busy riding horses, playing with her dogs and cats, flying drones, and racing cars. So in my next life, I want to come back as Shauna. So Shauna and I work with customers every day, helping them to drive adoption at scale using the Tableau Blueprint for Customer Success. Has anybody heard of Blueprint while they've been here this week? Perfect. So Blueprint, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, is a step-by-step guide to implementing a data-driven culture within your organization. Whether your organization is new to self-service analytics or you've already deployed and you need to scale your use of data throughout the organization, transforming how your company makes decisions is not an easy task, and we get that. Incorporating data and analytics into your decision-making processes can make a transformative impact on the way you do business every day, though. But successfully scaling it requires a deliberate approach to becoming data-driven. Every customer is different, but the Blueprint outlines the best practices from thousands of companies that we work with all the time.
Awesome. So among the most common questions we hear as we work with our C-suite executives, line of business leaders, analysts, IT managers, and centers of excellence are focused around how to drive adoption of Tableau at scale in companies that are large, that are globally distributed, where departments don't necessarily talk to each other, where silos exist, where you have multiple server platform instances, and maybe those teams aren't talking to each other. How do we do that? So what we're going to do today is talk about some of the proven strategies that we've uncovered while we work with these customers that you can implement in your own organization. And when you need help, much of the information is actually in the Blueprint information that we provide on our site, tableau.com/blueprint. We make it really difficult to find. And today we're going to talk to you about how to drive adoption at scale.
Absolutely.
But first, we want to quickly talk about why it's important. Why should you care? And because we're a data company, we're going to give you some numbers. So here they are. And I'm going to read a little bit. I apologize in advance, but I want to make sure I get these right for you. So according to VentureBeat in July, 87% of data science projects never make it into production. Imagine that, investing that much money in your data scientists to have an 87% failure rate. 77% of businesses are reporting that business adoption of big data and AI initiatives continue to represent a big challenge for business. That means that 3/4 of that software that's being built is apparently collecting dust. Ouch. 80% of analytics insights will not deliver business outcomes through 2022, about 2.25 years. All AI projects are going to remain alchemy, run by wizards. And that kind of makes me a little nervous because at Tableau we help people see and understand their data. And as much as I like Harry Potter and wizards and the world of wizardry, I think that this type of stuff should be accessible to everybody. What are they called? The muggles.
Yes. Not
just the wizards. 60% of big data projects are going to fail to move past their preliminary stages. Oops, Gartner messed up on that one. They looked at their numbers again. It's actually 80%. 80% of big data projects, and we're talking about projects with large investments. We don't want to see that kind of failure rate. But the biggest problem is not knowing what you're looking for in the data. It's having no idea what you're looking for in the data. That's according to Deloitte. Imagine that, reams and reams of data, and not truly understanding what it is that you're looking for. And when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. We want to make sure you have enough tools in your toolbox so that you can go back and drive adoption with more than just a hammer, and hopefully a little bit more nicely to your users as well.
So today we're going to run through a brief case study. We're going to talk about some employees that work at the Acme Packing Company. Now, Acme's been using Tableau for a while, and they've had some limited success in a few areas of the business. They know they need to become more data-driven in order to compete in today's modern analytics workflow, right? And in order to do that, they need to empower their people to ask questions of their data. They recently decided that they're going to invest heavily in Tableau. They went with an enterprise license agreement, and they got access to Tableau for the entire company. But despite getting that, they're still not sure why they're not seeing the adoption that they hoped that they would see. They're still not sure why it's not taking hold within the organization. Recently, the CEO was walking around at Acme, talking to some of the employees, and somebody told her, I feel like it's difficult to use Tableau. I keep running into roadblocks. Where's the data that I need? Who do I go to when I need support? It doesn't feel like all the extra work that this is taking is my job. And I'm not sure how to overcome all of these different obstacles. Has anybody ever felt that way at work, like something was rolled out and you just didn't get the tools that you needed to really take advantage of it? I see some hands. I know I've been in that position.
Absolutely. So let's talk about some of the people at Acme Corporation that are crying out for Blueprint, that are crying out for help at adoption. As Acme's grown larger and larger, they have some key players in their organization, but it's not enough. Let's talk about how we enable these people. So meet our friend Nathan. He's our Tableau champion. He works in supply chain. He's been using Tableau for a lot of years. He loves Tableau. He loves it so much he's on Tableau Public. Who here's heard of Tableau Public, by the way? All right, so Tableau Public is how we can share our vizzes with the world. And he's been on Tableau Public. He loves conservation efforts. He's posting about them all the time. That's his side hobby, because he really loves data. He's the go-to guy at Acme Corporation. You know that guy when you have a question just seems to have the answer, so everybody is going over to him and saying, hey man, can you help me with this LOD calculation? Can you help me figure out how to publish to server? Who knows this guy, by the way? Is this guy sounding familiar? Yeah, he's kind of, goes home, talks about Star Wars a lot, makes these really vague movie references, laughs in meetings, and nobody gets them. But he's a great guy. He has a hobby. His hobby is his career. Couldn't we be that lucky?
I think it's some of the people here. I see some of those faces.
You see some of the people not yet. You guys are Nathan, right? Good. We have some stuff for you today. We're going to help you out. Nathan really wants friends, and that's not because people don't like Nathan. What we mean by that is Nathan wants more Tableau people that he can connect with. Because while Nathan is mentoring and helping grow these Tableau people in his organization, he feels like he's the one who knows Tableau the best. But then he looks at Zen Masters and he thinks, I know nothing at all. Nathan really wants to grow his skills, but he's busy helping all of these people get onboarded. And you know what? Nathan doesn't have enough time in his day now. He can't help all the people he needs to help. So Nathan's boss, okay, so if you're Nathan's boss here, this might relate to you. Nathan's boss is getting pretty upset, right? Because Nathan's spending all this time helping all these other people, some of them in HR, some of them in finance, some of them in procurement. He's not doing a supply chain job, or at least it doesn't feel that way to Nathan's boss. So Nathan's boss is having conversations with Nathan, saying things like, well, hey, Nathan, you know, that's great, but we have these goals this week and these objectives, and you need to make sure that you meet them and that you're not burning yourself out, helping everybody else out. And I just don't see the value of the time you're putting in elsewhere versus the value here. Is anybody here's Nathan's boss? Does this kind of resonate with you? There's a Nathan's boss, thank you. I know you guys are good guys. I'm not trying to make it sound bad, but yeah, you've got day-to-day objectives you need to meet. So that's Nathan. Yeah. Let's meet another character.
So this is Penny. Penny's a brand new intern at Acme Corporation, and she's super excited and super motivated to get started. She's got 12 weeks in the job, and they've told her that she needs to figure out Tableau while she's in this job and start using it to make a difference in the company. And here at the end of the quarter, some of the projects that she's gonna work on are you gonna use those Tableau skills that she's developed in her internship. She's really eager to figure out what working in the real world is all about. And on her first day on the job, she's given an orientation, gets a new laptop, and then everybody else on the team goes off to a meeting and leaves her behind. And she's like, all right, where do I start? And she's looking around, she can't figure it out. There's nothing really on the web page telling her where to go, but she sees a way to file an IT ticket. So she puts in a ticket saying, please help me, I need my Tableau license.
Who here's Penny? I knew, yeah, 12 weeks on the job, figure out how to drive value. Tableau is the easiest tool, you'll be off and running in no time. And you get into this first obstacle of how do I even get Tableau? Okay, all right, we're gonna help you, Penny. We're gonna help you. Here's Bill. Bill is our IT manager at Acme Corporation. Bill has the toughest unsung hero job, right? Bill's managing server platform, and the way that he got to managing that is a few years ago, HR came to him and said, we have this thing, it's called Tableau, and we think it's great, and we know that in order to share our content with everybody, we need to deploy Tableau server, so can you get on that? Bill's just sitting there going, wait a second, another platform. I have 5 already. Okay, great, do I get help? No. Do I get funding? No. Just make it work? Okay. They said, don't worry, they said. It'll be self-service, they said. You just have to get it up and running, right? This is gonna be magical. So poor Bill is understaffed because everybody really does like Tableau at Acme. They're using it. They're making use of its functionality. He's really understaffed, and Bill is starting to handle questions like Penny's. How do I get Tableau? Well, if you're an IT manager like Bill, it's not that you don't care about those questions, but you know that your problems are not helping people get access to the platform. They're about how do you strategize for future growth? How do you plan for that capacity? What's the best architecture to put underneath this environment? What's going to happen when Tableau releases things like data management add-on and data prep? How do you plan for that? But Bill's getting pulled into these end user support questions, and he doesn't have time, and when he does have time, guess what? It's on the evenings and on the weekends. So Bill's missing his kids a little bit these days. And he feels that he has more to offer than just level 1 support, more than just getting people on board and into Tableau. But because Acme's been scaling so quickly, no one has taken that step back to think about how that scaling is gonna happen. Who here is a Bill? Who can we celebrate today as the Bills in the audience? Yeah, a couple, yeah, all right, thank you, Bills, all right. Let's meet our final person at Acme Corporation that we're going to help today through our speech here.
So this is Jesse. So Jesse's the CFO at Acme Corporation, and Jesse is always going on and on about the modern analytics workflow, about data-driven decision makings. He's always just harping on these things, but people are like, don't you get it, man? We don't have the data you're talking about. It's not there. I haven't been trained in this stuff. I don't know what you want me to do. I mean, there's just so many unanswered questions in the organization, and you're beating this drum, and we just can't do what you want us to do. Jesse feels frustrated in his role because he's not driving the organization forward like he wants to. He spends all this time evangelizing his point of view, but it's to no avail. He's not moving the needle, and he doesn't have any idea why. And don't even get him started when it comes to IT. They're not getting anything done that he needs them to get done. They're unresponsive, and even if they do respond, it's a week later. They've already moved on past that problem. They're on to the next problems. Jesse doesn't think finance is ever going to get where he wants them to go.
Are there any Jessies? Maybe you're not quite a CFO, but maybe you're in this role trying to drive this vision down and people just don't seem to get it. I see you got one hand. Okay. All right. Well, we'll help all of you out here today in the room. And what we're going to do next is we're going to bring up our blueprint. Most of you have heard of blueprint. Has anybody not heard about blueprint? One person has not heard about blueprint. Did you register today? You did. Okay.
Just drove in this morning.
Awesome. Perfect.
So we all care about successful adoption of Tableau at scale. And here at Tableau, we really call it out in the blueprint. The positive steps that you're taking to drive adoption will have a positive impact on both the analytic proficiency of the organization and a positive impact on the staff if you do it correctly. It'll enhance the sense of community, and it'll enable people like Bill and Nathan and Penny to live better lives at work. They're not always stressed out about the details of this. When they have a trusted and a governed platform and they feel like they're not in it alone, everything just gets better. And as a result, they're going to help Jesse reach his goal of actually transforming the organization and creating a data-driven culture. So with all of that, let's talk about how how Acme Corporation went from Tableau now to Tableau wow. I apologize, she made me say that. So, and we're going to introduce some action-oriented steps that you guys can take back to your organizations to maybe push your own organizations in the direction of developing a data-driven culture.
Okay, so we're going to move into our first topic on blueprints. I'm just going to go back one. I'm going to do the thing you're not supposed to go back, but we're going to highlight just a couple of things here on blueprint that we feel are the kind of the most important things to be thinking about. The very first one is education. There's so much going on with education. Apparently, once you go back, you can't go forward. Okay, here we go.
All right.
Don't go back. So education is a critical component of any kind of adoption plan, and having a formal education program is part of that. As a matter of fact, data shows that a 70% greater adoption rate amongst companies exists in those that adopt formal training programs. And I'm not talking about the one where you send out an email saying, check out these five Tableau videos. Okay, great. At another presentation, I invented the Tableau watch. So now I've invented the Tableau video. I meant YouTube, by the way. So we're not talking about these YouTube videos, just pointing people to videos. We're talking about a formal training program. People who understand how and why to use Tableau are significantly more likely to become regular users. And that's important because Blueprint is all about becoming a data-driven culture. And if, like anything else, it's a muscle. And if we want those muscles to be strong, we have to use them regularly. If you don't know how to use the equipment at a gym, you're not going to exercise your muscles. You're going to give up. You're going to go to the gym. You're going to look at it. It's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be, I have to put in a ticket to the IT support desk, and all of a sudden, instead of just doing a simple walk on a treadmill, you're asking me to run a mile, and I have never even run a step in my life. I want to make sure that people are feeling comfortable using those muscles. And we hope that's why you partner with Tableau in the first place, is to become more data-driven, is to use those muscles. So Tableau is easy to use, sure. No matter how easy something is to use, there are people who just feel like they need that extra support, that they're not confident in things that are easy to use, right? And they need that extra training. They need that extra help. Especially now, as we're moving from more traditional reporting factories to enabling everybody to use their data. Education is about elevating the proficiency of their use of that data. That's why we talk about it in the proficiency row on the blueprint. So as we move beyond BI legacy teams, we need to think about how these people who have maybe never used or looked at or touched data in any heavy way before, how we make them feel comfortable, safe, and secure using that data, and that's all through the tools and the programs that we provide. I think you have something to add here, Chad, right?
Yeah, so one of the things that we see a lot of times, and it's probably going to sound very familiar to you guys, is that when organizations do decide that they're going to provide a training program to their employees, what they end up doing is providing a one-size-fits-all training program for their people. Well, they'll say, hey, we've got some videos, you should go watch them. And that's really about all the training that they put out there. If they do put a specific plan in place for their employees, a lot of times you'll see that it's so very basic that it's either not in depth enough for the people that are really going to need it to be in Tableau every day, or maybe is overly difficult for some of the people that are just going to be your more casual users. So that's one of the things that we see all the time. So what we tell people is, in order to realize the full value of Tableau, what you need is an education plan that really takes the users into consideration, that figures out what their role in the organization is, what their role with relation to data is, and how they're going to be using Tableau on a day-to-day basis. So one of the best ways to start with this is with an organizational role mapping exercise where you take all the positions in the company and you actually outline their relationship to data and then define the type of training most appropriate to that person in the organization. That also takes into account maybe some information that you have on learning styles, and then have a plan for the licenses that you need for your organization. Well, that plan will come out of doing the organizational role mapping exercise. You figure out the training you need, you figure out the licensing type that you need. It gives you so much more information in order to come up with a plan that's right-sized for your employees.
And because everybody learns differently, and this isn't a presentation about learning styles, but we know that people can be kinetic learners, different types of learning styles. I might need to see it, I might need to hear it, I might need to do it. Your training plan has to address those things. You have to meet your users where they are. This is why we talk about self-service being self-service, yes, but lots of thought and planning to get there, right? So you need to meet them. So it's not just enough to provide videos. You need to think about classroom training. You need to think about other opportunities for users to learn. Some users can't even learn through formal classroom training. They want to do something a little bit more organic, like user groups, like other ways of connecting. They want to be inspired by ideas. Some organizations are going to create that training in-house. Some of them are going to outsource that, and that's fine. In some of the organizations I work with, they've done a train-the-trainer approach because they've realized that training users at scale in the very basic Tableau skills, let's say, or basic data proficiency skills, is not a good ROI. And that they can, by sourcing it externally, I should say. And what they've done is they've trained their more intermediate users to give back to their communities, to do those initial training and onboarding sessions, and then they focus their investments in more formalized learning to the more expert users to upskill those intermediate and advanced users even more. So there's different ways to apply that to your own education program to get the right mix for you. What's most important, though, is that you do have an education plan, that you spend time doing that you're addressing these points, that the training is appropriate for the skill, that the training is role-based, that you're addressing the learning styles, and you're capturing KPIs. And you know what's really awesome? Yay! We've taken some of this work out for you. You don't have to create roles. You don't have to now take the time to understand what roles you have in your organizations, because this is how we roll at Tableau. Okay, yeah, I made myself say that one. We've created role-based learning paths for you. Who's heard of this week at Tableau Conference? Who hasn't? It's okay if you haven't. Cool, because you're about to learn more. What we've done is we've understood that basically there are 12 roles that fit many organizations. Yes, thank you. Take those pictures. This is valuable stuff, but it's also online. Tableau.com/blueprint or Tableau.com/learning will get you there too. We've understood that there are 12 different roles that work together in enterprises and organizations as small as it can be, but also at scale. So some organizations, one person will fulfill many roles. But what we see in organizations at scale is that as you become bigger and bigger, and as your Tableau deployment grows and grows, these are going to split off. And the badges range from things like, I'm a consumer of the data. And you know, that's a good point to pause and stop and think about that, right? Consumers of your data need training as well. Sure, you can point them to a dashboard, you can point them to a viz, you can say, click here, there are some filters, but do they really understand what they're looking at? And do they really understand the insight? And even more so, do they understand how to take an action after that, right? Because we're showing people insights so that they can take actions. That's what data-driven culture means, that we're taking actions to improve our organization in some way. They also range all the way up to server architects, so the people, the Bills of the world who are sitting there struggling, trying to figure out how to plan for capacity. So these badges are now out, they're available, you can explore some of them for free. They're tied to our e-learning offering. So in order to complete some of these badges, you do need to invest in our e-learning platform. You can find out more on the pricing online, but right now it's $10 a month for the creator training.
So the blueprint clearly outlines these 12 roles that exist in a lot of organizations, as Sean has said, and that are critical to the success of an organization if you hope to deploy Tableau at scale successfully. And the table here matches each of them to the different roles in the organization. When you log on and you go into e-learning, what you used to see was we had e-learning for creators, e-learning for explorers. Anybody familiar with those? So now basically we've said, that's a lot of information, and if you're going to be, say, an executive sponsor or a community leader, maybe you don't need all of those skills, but here are the exact courses you should be taking in e-learning that's going to skill you up and prepare you for that role in the organization. And if you have multiple roles, maybe you go through and you pick the ones that are going to skill you up in those areas too. But it really does set you up for success without overloading you with courses that don't necessarily mean anything for the role that you're in. And for those of you that have already been to the Blueprint booth, you've probably seen the badges now. You can also take those badges and put them out on LinkedIn and show that you've actually been certified by Tableau with the skills necessary for each of these different role-based learning paths.
And you should go down to the Blueprint booth because you can even take those assessments right here, right now, today, and showcase your badges. And we do that through a company called Acclaim. So these are verified badges. Somebody can go in and actually verify that you took that skill. I did the executive sponsor one. It was pretty
I did that one too.
You did that one too?
I did. I am now an executive sponsor.
There you go.
If anybody needs one. No, I'm not going anywhere.
Okay. And you know what? That's really important that we call it executive sponsors as well. So just as it's important to train your consumers, when you think about going at scale in a data-driven culture, we often forget about those people. I was going to tell you a little story. Do we have any like CFOs here, like executive level folks? Please don't be shy. Okay, great, awesome. Sometimes you don't know everything. So it's a scary truth. And sometimes you need help. Training your executive sponsors and the expectations of what they need to do is really important because not all of your sponsors actually are going to come from a data background. And they may not know the important things that they need to be doing to be supporting and driving the culture, like our friend Jesse. It's not just about explaining a vision. There are things that you need to do to drive that vision forward. And there are things that you may not know how to do. And that's why we've identified an executive sponsor as a very critical piece of this. So we need to set their expectations just as much as they need to set ours out of what they expect from their data-driven culture. And so that's really critical. And we often don't think about training as something that we apply to people that are in higher levels at the organization. And so, we need to shift that a little bit because as our executive sponsors grow in knowledge and in understanding and in empathy for what it is that people are going through as they try to drive this culture, they're going to be right in the boat with you. They're going to be helping you row. So we've also done some additional work, believe it or not. We've taken these role-based learning paths and we've mapped them in ways to show you how, and this is just one example, but how they interact together to create this culture. So everybody has a role and a part to play. And here what you're seeing, for example, is our executive sponsors, learning about blueprint and data culture. Those are the things they're going to get trained in. What is blueprint, right? So that we can all speak the same language around, being agile, proficient, having community. They're also going to get trained in data culture and what that means. The community leaders receive very similar training. And our data stewards are focused on governance and data analysis, prep and stewardship. And together, these roles come together to talk about how data culture works within your organization. And with that training, they can now take those roles and participate in meaningful conversations to drive the organization that way. And that's another reason why these badges are so important, why these capabilities and skills are important. And what was really interesting to me in taking some of these badges is how much we focus on those outside external factors, just as much as we focus on how to use Tableau. We know that you need to know why to use Tableau as well, and that's what we're trying to drive to here. So it's important, right? We talk about the how and the why. And so we always need to make sure that we're looking at those two things in our education plan as well.
Absolutely.
So enough about education, but one more thing. Just one more. I think. Maybe one more. The reason that you're doing training programs, the reason you do any kind of program in your organization is to move the needle somehow, is to drive some kind of change, to elevate some kind of skill, to grow knowledge. And I often say if you can't measure it, don't do it. If you don't know what it's going to drive, then don't do it. And this slide just looks at some KPIs because we want to encourage you to think about measuring your training. and come up with goals for your training program. And they could be as simple as, I think in our organization, 20% of people are consumers. It's probably higher than that, but 20% of people are consumers. So by the end of Q1, let's make sure that 10% of those are consumer certified. That's measurable. That is a measurable outcome that you can then use to report back on the progress of your training program. Knowing who comes to classroom training, if you have that in your organization, is also very important. What I'm trying to get at here is that measurement, knowing how those outcomes are being driven, knowing what drives those outcomes are critical. Don't implement an education training plan without knowing in some way how you're going to measure that baseline, measure the change, evaluate, and celebrate progress, yay, or figure out what you need to alter to make sure you're getting the outcomes you expect. The other thing, too, that I find in working in my large organizations deploying Tableau at scale is that often we don't communicate that success outwardly, right? We sit in our silos and we achieve a goal, we run the training program, and that kind of stays here. What we want to do is elevate that up here. We want to make sure that that's public and published. One of the things we talk about in a complementary program called Skill Belts, which is a way of gamifying your learning and a way of customizing some additional training in your organizations, is how do you identify the people who've had this training? How do you identify the people in your organization that are consumers? How do you identify the people in the organization that are designers? Where do you put that? I think Tableau probably has an answer. It's probably a viz you can build and show people who those are and make that available and make it public so that people can see the progress and people want to participate in things that are successful. All right, next topic.
Yeah.
We're moving on to the next one. We've finished education. As an important part of what you need to be doing is thinking about adoption at scale. Enablement becomes so much more important and so much more education driven. Now we're going to move on to the next one.
Yeah. So communication, there you go. When you deploy Tableau broadly across an organization, establishing a method of internal communication is critical to successful deployment. How do you get the word out about the things that you're doing in your organization? Where do people go? Remember when we talked about Penny? Where does somebody like Penny go when they need to figure out what's going on, how to get a license, where to get training, how to connect with other people in the organization? So one of the things we tell people is that our most successful customers use a variety of self-help methods to get started with Tableau, to answer all the frequently asked questions that they're getting, and to locate other users within the company. One of the easiest ways to communicate with your extended user base is to set up an enablement website where you drive people to go for the answers to all those questions and more. When a new user like Penny comes into the organization and is interested in getting a Tableau license, who do they contact? How do they get into touch with them? Do they submit an IT ticket? Do they go to a site where they can download it onto their computer themselves? Or do they have to reach out to somebody else to get it put onto their machine? What do they need to know then to start using Tableau, and what resources are there that's available to them?
Well, and that's an important point. So many companies I work with say, yeah, we have training. Okay, that's awesome, really awesome. You've taken a lot of steps, you've invested in putting that training together. Where is it? Well, they can get to it on a wiki. Okay, who knows about the wiki? Anybody? So often we fail to kind of tie the bow around the package, right, and communicate. And we think that communicating through various channels, like how many emails do we get in a day and things like that, sometimes we drown ourselves in those communications. But what we know is that if we keep repeating those communications, people are going to get it. So it needs to be accessible, it needs to be available. People like Penny need to know how to get there on day one. So how do you make it available on day one? Maybe it's part of your onboarding program. Maybe it's part of the HR talk that they get when they come in. They have to sign their, sorry, I'm Canadian, W-9, is that it? What is the form? I-9s? I don't know. I-9, thank you, yes, thank you. It's called something different in Canada, but you sign your form, make sure that you get all your paychecks and all that. Make it part of that process if it's that important to your organization, or make it part of your department's training onboarding process. So if you're the only one, so remember Nathan, poor Nathan, who knows everything. He's our wizard. He's not our muggle. He's trying to help everybody in the organization. As Acme scales, he can't possibly do this by himself. And it becomes more difficult to effectively manage and support your user community as a result. And that's why Nathan's boss over here is struggling with Nathan, because he does understand it's important to help people. But hey, we've got department goals and objectives of our own. In order to communicate about this, some companies use lots of methods. Some people use SharePoint. Some people use other internet sites. Whatever you choose to implement, it's important to know what to implement. This screenshot here that you're looking at is also available online at tableau.com/blueprint underneath our communication section. And what it is it lays out what you should be thinking about on your enablement intranet, on your internal page that communicates things. It talks about things like general information. It talks about things like education. It talks about things like a blog. These are the things that we think are important to include and also continue to add to in order to keep the content fresh. You want people to keep coming back. This isn't a one-time, okay, I got my Tableau license. 6 months later, I need something else, and I forgot about where that wiki page is, and I have to go ask Nathan again. This is about making sure it's front and center, and people are always going back to that page. So that's why we talk about things like newsletters and blogs and other content that you can keep adding and keep it fresh, keep it current. And if you're working with some folks like Chad and myself at Tableau, I challenge you to challenge us to help you find that fresh content. If you have a customer success manager. If you don't worry. We have help for you too. In fact, on our community pages, we post things like Best of Community. There are some active people out there that are posting the Best of Tableau Public every week, which is so inspiring. If you've never looked at the Best of Tableau Public or the Viz of the Day, I encourage you to go to the Tableau Public and do that. There are many things that we at Tableau do to help make sure you've got fresh content to post to make it easy for you to do that.
Yeah, so one of the things that's really hard, especially for large organizations, is scaling beyond using somebody like Nathan as the voice to get the word out to everybody. Once you get beyond a certain point, that just doesn't scale. Having a person out there that's trying to reach everybody and is fielding all of the questions, it just isn't a good method once you get beyond a certain point. So by having a frequently asked question page, by driving people to a single site, what you're going to do is relieve the burden off of somebody like Nathan and push it lower in the organization by developing champions that can also point people within the subordinate organizations to the enablement website to get the questions answered, to know where to submit tickets, to reduce the burden also on your IT staff. Because now they don't have to answer the simple questions because they're all on the FAQ. So it really comes down to the ability to continue to scale as Tableau spreads throughout global organizations.
How many people have an enablement intranet today? How many people have something like this today in their own organization? Somewhat, yeah? How many people don't? How many people just completely lost the point of my question? Okay. If you do or if you don't, and especially if you don't, if you're panicking by now, don't. This doesn't have to be a huge effort. We talk about things like agility and being agile. We have help for you. We have examples of this. These examples are all available publicly. We have a little QR code here that's going to take you to an example page. We even post on our own community to get you started. Enablement intranets are rampant out there. They look differently. They act differently. They have to look and act like what your organization looks like. But if you need examples, they are out there. You don't have to start from scratch. And if you have a customer success manager, I encourage you to work with them to get you pointed to the right places. And again, if not, QR code buddy right here is going to give you an example right from the get-go. So do be thinking about that enablement intranet. Do be thinking about that space where people can land and go to and get the help that they need and be self-service. And then make sure you communicate and communicate and communicate about that enablement intranet. Make sure you're driving people to it. At organizations where this is front and center, it exists on their home page of their intranet. So when you go to acmecorporation.com, there should be a link there saying, need Tableau? Something like that that points them to that content, front and center. Because remember, if you want to be a data-driven culture, it needs to be front and center. So at scale, and I think, oh, hey, look at that, that's you. Okay, sorry, Chad.
So as your community grows in your organization, one of the things you're going to quickly realize is the way that you support your organization, like we said, has to scale with your organization. And that single champion can work when the deployment is small. But once you grow to thousands of users, what you need is a team of like-minded evangelists that are out there in the organization that are helping spread the message about Tableau and helping to skill up the people within their parts of the organization. Given that Shauna and I are here in Vegas this week and we're staying in a big pyramid next door, one of the things we said was that pyramid structure is really what we see in a lot of organizations, where you have somebody in the organization that's responsible for the entire organization, for enablement for their users. But by building a community of champions underneath them in all the different silos within the organization, finding that person that's also proven themselves with Tableau, that understands data, that's already had that aha moment about why data is crucial, that understands where to go to get the licenses and what's going on and how to get training, by skilling that person up and then empowering them to be the first line of defense within their portion of the organization, to answer questions, triage, and then elevate as necessary. What you see is the ability for enablement to scale beyond just that single point of focus. Does anybody remember, anybody Gen X or older, where we used to have like telephone trees sitting next to the phone in the kitchen, and when something happened, you called 10 people and they called 10 people? That's exactly what we're talking about here, is being able to disseminate the message throughout the organization and get word out to everybody about when the next training is going to be, where it's going to be, who they can go to for help, and et cetera, et cetera.
So in other words, tying it back to our characters here, back to our actors at Acme, how do you build more Nathans? How do you help more pennies? And before we get into measurement real quick, I just want to drive that point home. As you train your executive sponsors as part of your journey, they're going to understand the importance of these champions, and they should understand the importance of these champions, and they're going to help you identify those champions within those silos, within those organizations. Then you do something really awesome called building a community of champions, where you connect these people together, and then really awesome stuff happens. Because we know when you put people into a room and you let them talk for a while, pretty amazing things are going to happen. They're going to connect, they're going to talk with each other, they're going to learn, they're going to grow, and we start building a flywheel. And that's why we think that pyramid model, that phone tree rather, is so important. I mean, it worked for Avon, right? So it's going to work for you too. Well, let's talk about measurement. We talked a little bit about it in education, but I think it's really, really critical. And this is so near and dear to my heart. One of my favorite sayings is, if you tell me how you're going to measure me, that's how I'm going to behave, right? So create measurements that drive the behavior that you want, because evaluating your progress with Tableau at scale is so critical. We're talking about big efforts. We're talking about 80% of your projects not getting past the first stages. We're talking about trying to maximize your success rate, which is going to drive other returns on your investment. So without some form of evaluation, you cannot communicate the success of your program, and this is how we see programs failing, right? Who's been in that room where they say, great, you did that thing, what was the outcome? I've been in that room. Who else has been in that room? Right, kind of a scary moment, right? If you don't have the answer. But if you've thought about this, if you've taken a thoughtful approach to this, if you have those measurements in place, you get to stand up and say, yeah, I have that answer. This is how I measured it. And you know what? I'll tell you another little secret. It might not be the right measure. Truly, you might miss. And that's okay, because you measured it. And that's going to set you head and shoulders above your peers. That's going to make you look like the true data leader you are. And it's going to give you the feedback that you need to get better the next time, instead of somebody dismissing you because you didn't measure it and you don't have the outcome. That's why measurement is so critical. That's what leaders are looking for, is that you understand the things that you're doing and how they're driving outcomes. And by the way, that's how you become data-driven, right? So there are many ways to evaluate that progress. We're going to tell you about a few most common. That's what this slide is getting at. But there are many, many more. So this isn't the limit. These are just the things that we think are kind of the easiest to measure, like things that you can get started with right away. Because of course there's a cost to measuring, and you want to make sure that you've got the right measure for them. You know, there's a balance, and you want to make sure you hit that balance. But you know, the first one, let's go back to not just education, but the other enablement initiatives that you're going to do. We're going to touch on a couple of them a little bit later. But are they engaging with those initiatives? Which initiatives are they engaging in? How are they engaging with them? How are they finding them? What do they feel about them? We're going to get to practice that later today in this session, because we're going to ask you to evaluate this session and tell us what you think. So you're going to get that hands-on practice so that you can understand how important it is. Are people posting on the intranet? People put intranets together, they put forums together, and you know they don't really measure what people are doing with those. But do that. Is the forum serving a purpose? If you put together a forum and no one's posting, why continue to spend the time on the forum? Find another mechanism. Let's talk about server too. There's some examples here about server, like login frequency, days since last login, subscriptions and alerts. There's so much rich data on server, and today we found out about some even more cool data coming in the future from the Devs on Stage presentation. Many ways in which to manage your server, But when you're looking at this from a scale perspective, you're looking at things like active users. You're looking at things about people logging in. How many of the same people have logged in? How many people are creating workbooks? And by the way, kind of a neat little segue, but in your training program, if one of your training initiatives is to make people more proficient at Tableau, why not create a measure that looks at how many more dashboards are created? And then, little pro tip, also create one about dashboards being retired, because you also want to make sure that you're retiring stale content. So yes, you probably do want to see a bit of growth, but you don't want to see thousands of workbooks on your server that aren't being used. Another example of measurement. Another example of communicating how your adoption at scale is working because of the governance programs you're going to put in. We're not going to talk too much about governance today, but we're going to be around for a little bit after, so you can come and ask us about that if you'd like. So, and the last example I'll leave just to kind of like bring it home here is, here's a good example. How many of you have like really slow performing workbooks on your server? Like slow, yeah, right? Yeah. Run a how to create performant workbooks webinar. Run a classroom session, and then see how many more you get performance. See what your change in performance is. Target those people with those laggy workbooks. Give them some love. They put together something that people are complaining about because you know what? They're trying to use it, right? No one's going to complain about a slow workbook that no one's looking at. So give those people a little bit of love, but then look at their workbooks after the training and see if it improved anything. And then again, you're justifying the programs that you're putting in place to help those people. So it kind of all really comes back to measurement. You see what we're doing here? Data-driven culture, adoption at scale becomes data-driven? Yeah. And I'm looking at the time, so we're going to keep moving. Yes, sorry, Chad. I do this to Chad all the time. He's such a great partner, though. He never complains.
Sit quietly, wait until it's my turn. No. So these are some of the ways that you can think about collecting data on what's happening within Tableau at your organization. Matt Cole's shareable data source, which Shauna had up. No, there wasn't a slide on that, was there? All right.
This is Matt Cole's.
Okay,
right
this is Matt Cole's.
This is the amazing Matt Cole's. Matt Cole's,
yeah,
when
so
you listen to this recording, we love you.
This is a shareable data source that you can search. If you go out onto the Tableau community and search for Matt Cole's or search for the shareable data source, what you're going to find is this dashboard, which has a ton of information that you can capture on what's going on within your server environment. It's a workbook that you connect to the Tableau server repository and allows you to answer questions like, who are the most frequently logged in users? Or what are the top 10 workbooks across the server? And which workbooks aren't being used at all? And then how are people actually using server? For companies that have Tableau's premium support offering, you're also going to have access to a technical account manager who can do deployment reviews and take a look at the health of your server deployment. A ton of data in this also that you can apply back to your environment to make changes as necessary and to optimize the environment for your organization. You might notice here that there's non-performant workbooks in your server by doing this. And you might choose to work with your Tableau account team in order to provide training on the ways that the top workbook publishers and helping them understand how to create workbooks that are going to draw attention.
And for those of you that know, does anyone know Matt Cole's workbooks already? Anybody here? Yeah, a couple of people. So for those of you who know, the reason why you're looking at this on GitHub is because that's where it's moving to. So it was on Tableau Community before. Matt Cole's is moving that to GitHub so you can better manage version control and things like that. So we get to give you a sneak peek of that. So again, thanks, Matt Cole's. We appreciate you.
So, and then this is an example of how Tableau uses Tableau internally to look at Tableau online. This is a view of the Tableau community. And are you guys familiar with Tableau community? You can go out there and look things up online, ask questions. So Tableau community is one of the things that we love the most about Tableau. There's thousands of users out there that are constantly updating, providing answers to questions, asking questions themselves. And we can take a look here at a number of things to ensure that community is healthy. What you can see is a membership growth chart at the top where we can see that the overall trend is actually trending positive. But then we could also look at at different cohorts from the year that they actually first logged in, and then we can see how sticky Tableau community is. Are people going there once and not coming back? Because that answers a lot of questions as well. If everybody that comes to Tableau community is a new user, that means you're not getting any repeat users, and that's a good thing to know, right? And then Finally, there's a look at the authoring of the posts on the community forums, and then how that's trending as well. So this can help us to plan for things like how much capacity we need on our server. As more people are coming to it to post and to ask questions and to get their questions answered, we can plan ahead and make sure that we have the right amount of server space in order to host all those questions that are coming in. So it's a valuable source of information that allows you to resource plan as you go forward. And having the baseline data before you make changes to your environment is really critical, because then once you make changes and you drive change within the organization, you have a baseline to compare it to see what you did and the impact that it had and where you're at now.
So this is an example, sadly not of Tableau, but hopefully they'll get to Tableau's, so Swoop if you're listening. Measure your community engagement. This is an example of a third-party vendor. You don't have to use Swoop. We're not endorsing Swoop or anything like that, but it's just an example here. If you've got Yammer or Jive or SharePoint or something like that, you can overlay analytics on top of that, and then you can get some really great insights as to how people are using analytics, how they're not using analytics, what they're engaging with, who your influencers are. It can be hard to find champions and people who are really into these things at your organization. Analytics like this can help. So, one other thing that we can do is to kind of create this flywheel of users helping users and helping Penny out and helping the Nathans out of the world is Data Doctor. How many of you have been to Tableau Doctor this week or know of Tableau Doctor? Yeah, some of you. Data Doctor is a program you can take and bring into your own organizations. There's a whole toolkit on how to do this on our community pages. And we make all this information available for free. It's another example of engagement, another example of where you can measure that engagement. So hopefully, again, we're talking about measurement, we're getting that message home. And I know people are trying to get to their next session, so we'll kind of speed this up a little bit so that you can. Internal Tableau user group meetings are another way of enabling the Nates and the Pennies of the world to help each other. Who here has internal Tableau user group meetings of their organization? Who here is measuring those? In the sense of attendees, yeah, all right, superstar, rock star, awesome, I love it. Because when you start to do that, you start to understand what content is relevant, what's meaningful, what people want to hear about, what people want to see, what people want to do. Helps you identify champions. Again, there's some work that needs to be done at scale, but these user groups tend to take on a life of their own, and they start to spawn, and they start to help each other out, helping the bills of the world out. So our IT manager who's struggling under all these onboarding tickets, the community gives these people a place to go to answer those questions so the bills of the world can focus on what it is that they need to do. Finally, the possibilities for measuring engagement in your community are endless, right? You've got Tableau Days. Anybody here run Tableau Days within their organizations? Yeah, some of you do, and you're doing measurements on those. How many people are coming? What are we talking about year over year? Is attendance growing? Is it shrinking? Tableau Day, by the way, for those of you that don't know, is your way of providing a mini Tableau conference within your own company's walls. It's a great thing to do if you want to build an analytics day, if you want to talk about this at an organizational level. You've got lunch and learns and webinars, and we've talked at length about training and measuring your training, so we won't cover that again. But do think about measuring the things that you can do and capturing those metrics. It's important to do these things, but it's even more important to understand the impact they're having.
One of the best things about these also, sorry, I
No,
just jumped on ad-libbing. One
It's your
of
turn.
the
I've
things I
interrupted you
love
enough.
about them also is that a lot of these things are free. They cost you absolutely nothing, but a little bit of time and a little bit of initiative in order to put something together for your employees within your organization where you bring people together to talk about data and analytics and really skill them up by letting them work together. So.
Well, with that being said, let's go back to Acme. Let's figure out how all these things have helped. So now we've done training programs, we've done some measurement, we're doing enablement activities, we're monitoring this. So you know what, let's get into our DeLorean. Reverse time, let's go back to Penny's first day at Acme. Let's talk about the changes at Acme and how this has helped. Penny gets in on her first day and she sits at her laptop and Tableau's already installed because she's been identified at the company as a role that requires Tableau on her computer. It's already installed, it's already there, it's already activated. License-based login management, yes. Can't wait for that to come. So we're gonna jump in the DeLorean, we're gonna go back to the future too. So Penny's already off and running. When she opens Tableau and she opens her company's intranet, she sees that there's some resources for training and she's off and running right away. Within the first couple of days, she's built her first viz and wowed her manager's socks off because we know interns. They will do it. And she's been given the tools to do that. Bill is so happy right now because he hasn't received a call from Penny, because everything's working for her. She understands where to go. She understands how to connect with her community. She has a place to post her questions on her forum. Bill is now being able to focus on the tickets that come into his support queue that really have to do with server issues, and he's able to manage those. He's able to do problem identification. He's able to resolve those problems, and more importantly, he's going home on the weekends. He's going home at night because the community is functioning, and Bill can focus on the things that matter to him. And for those tickets that come through his queue that are really onboarding problems, he knows the champions to send them to because he can connect them, because he's been told, it's been made publicly available to him who the people in each department are that are the go-to people for the Pennies of the world. You want to talk about the next two?
And then Nate is loving life right now because he's actually reached out and developed some champions within the organization. So now he's not the only one that feels like he's trying to help everybody upskill themselves in Tableau. So he's using a skill belting program internally, and he's now working with the server information to find the interesting use cases that are out there, and then engaging with owners to help them present what they're doing. So Nathan's life is improved tremendously, and not only that, now he's actually able to spend more time on his real job as well, which is what his boss wanted in the first place.
All right.
And all of these people doing better now is what really helps Jesse. Because remember, Jesse was trying to create a data-driven culture. But now that his users are able to get online quickly, they're able to find use cases, they're able to find training, they're able to skill themselves up, they're able to communicate across the organization. The data-driven culture that Jesse was hoping for is finally there.
Yeah, it's so important, right? Because all that noise has died down.
Yeah.
People are doing it, and
Absolutely.
Jesse can now shape that vision and communicate it.
So Tableau Blueprint is truly a guide to measuring and ensuring a great experience within your Tableau deployment in your organization. And whether you're a casual user or an expert user, a key sponsor, if you're the platform administrator, you know, we should all be working at an organization like Acme, right? An organization where all the resources are there for your users. We hope you feel empowered to start identifying gaps in your organization and how you can address them. One thing we'd like to ask you to do, though, is before you leave here, if you haven't already done it, go down to the Blueprint booth and talk to some of the customer success managers down there. One of the things you can do down there is walk through a Tableau assessment where you answer some questions and then set up an appointment with one of the CSMs. Well, they'll talk about your deployment and maybe give you some very targeted advice on how you can take some of this back to your organization. You can also take some of the role-based training tests down there and maybe get your picture taken with one of the new role-based training signs.
Yeah, and so if you do have Q&A, we encourage you to head down to the Blueprint booth and ask them their questions. I know we want to finish this session on time, so we're going to move right to the next thing, which is help us measure this session. Help us participate in the important initiatives that we're trying to do here by providing you with the content that you're looking for at Tableau Conference. If this helped you, please tell us. If it didn't, tell us that too, because we want to make sure that you're getting what you want out of the conference. And if there are ways that we can improve this session, please do fill out your comments, because again, we're going to take your feedback, we're going to improve our program, we're going to measure it next year and see how we did. And finally, we know you have so many choices. There are so many sessions here this year, really great sessions. And the fact that you picked this one to come to today with all the competing sessions really warms my heart, makes me really humble and grateful. So I just wanted to really say thank you for choosing us, and thank you for spending your hour here with us. We hope you have a great remainder of your conference. Hope to see you at Data Night Out. If you have any questions, Chad and I will be around for a few more minutes before they kick us out for the next session. Or if you see us tonight at Data Night Out, please hope to see you tonight at Data Night Out. Feel free to pull us aside and chat our ears off. We're happy to talk to you about this stuff.
Thank you all very much.
Again.